Hello, everyone. Welcome to another SQL session. Now, this session promises to be brief because we would be touching on something very quickly. It's a concept that is necessary, all right? We would meet this kind of scenarios as we go on. Let us create a table. All right, let's create a table so that we could use this to explain. Let me see, create table, and let's call this maybe call it maybe a table of, say, purchase. Okay, so, and let's just quickly put anything, say item, which is going to be voucher, and that is a string, and then we have price, right? So price is also going to be a string. So that's the idea here. So let's assume that you are working with a team, and the data that comes in are probably all strings, or maybe the column that is meant to be numeric contains string data types, or they are all string data types. Now, how can you run arithmetic processes? How can you run your calculations on those items? It's not possible to run arithmetic operations on string columns, right? So, so imagine situations where you might not be able to control the source of the data, or you are not probably the database administrator, so you may not be able to change the data type in that particular table. Probably the access you've been given to that data set is a view access, all right? So you cannot insert elements into it or something. You can only work on that table. Now let's insert some comments, so that some records, so that we could use that to explain this case. So first of all, I'll have to include my SQL magic command, and I would do an insert into, let's say, insert into the table is purchase. All right, purchase, purchase. Okay, so then we have the item, and we have the price, then we have values. Let me do this. Let me do this in the next slide. All right. All right. So we have values, and then I would say, for this item, I would probably say fan. Just randomly put some things, and so even though we put numbers here, it will still accept it, but the data type is going to be um the data type is going to be numbers. All right, so let's just continue. All right, so then I would, for this, to avoid confusion, let me just put them in their strings. Okay, so then I will just add some values, some other values, and say maybe this is a bottle, and bottle is probably 3,000, and let me add like two more. Okay, so probably this is a power bank, and power bank is, say, 4,000, and one more. So let's say this is a towel, and the towel is 2,000. Okay, so let's check our data sets. Let's check our table and see what we have there. So we called the name select all from, what's the name, that's purchase, right? So purchase is the name of the table, and these are the contents. Now let's try a simple arithmetic process. Remember that the price column are strings, okay, varying characters, so they are strings. So let us see if a magic can happen here. Let's say select, and let's do an aggregation. Let's say sum of price, right, from orders from, sorry, purchase. Okay. And from, okay. So I'm saying that the error here is this sovereign character does not exist from purchase. Okay. So you might need to add explicit typecast and other stuff. Yeah. So it cannot run this operation. So it just can't work. All right. If we try some other allegations, there might be possibility, like let's say if we do max, if we do max, the price max, let's do max price, it tells us 8,000, and it is correct, right? It is correct. But let's try something else, and let's insert a record so that you understand what is going on here. Okay, so I will do a skill, and let me do insert into what am I insert into the purchase. Okay, and I would just item and the price, item and the price, right? Then we talk about the values, and let's look at an item name, another item name. Maybe we're just going to do it a Wi-Fi, and then the price is going to be, let's say, 94. All right. So that has gone in. So if we check this table, we see 94. Now, what do you expect to be the maximum amount here? It should still be 8,000, right? But let's see what is going to happen. So when we run this, you can see that it's showing the maximum 94 because this is string. So it operates as a string. When you are doing a string and you want to check the maximum, it does that by the first character, not, it doesn't count the other things. It does that by the first character. We can try that on a normal Python code. Let's say we have something like x. Let's say we have x equals, let's do a list of items, and let's say I have ADA, I have Byron, okay, I have Zara, all right, I have maybe Godwin. Now, by if I check the maximum of this x, obviously it should give us the the letter that is the last, is the highest. Okay, letter that has the highest value, more like in alphabetical order. And if we put it in descending order, z is going to come up first, right? If put it in ascending order, z is going to come up last. So in this, the maximum value is recognized based on that concept. So I should expect Zara to come out, right? So it said list objects. Okay. Oh. All right. So that is list object has no attribute max. All right. So let's do max x, and it tells me Byron. Okay. Let's make this lowercase, and max x tells me Zara. So that's because the lowercase and upper cases in the precedences, they have different values. All right, so there's something called the ASCII code. So when you check, you discover that a small letter a has a different value, and capital letter A has a different value. So if you put b and z, b small letter b would kind of have a higher value compared to capital letter Z. All right, so like if I make this b and I make this Z, you see that Zara should also come up as the next thing. So okay, Ada comes up because Ada is a small letter, so it has it has like a higher precedence. So if I make Ada A and I run this, I should have Zara. Now you see that it is becoming confusing using marks for strings. It begins to give you something you don't expect. All right, so that's what happens when you put these in numbers. Imagine I put 8,000, okay, and I just put say 91, all right, and I put 1 million, okay, and I just go by 6 6. Now you expect that the result is going to be the highest amount here, but the result is going to give me 91. You see that the result is going to give me 91 because it's checking just the first character. All right, because that is how it's used to run its own maths when it comes to strings. All right, so that is the method you would see here. So because this, so you shouldn't be surprised if it gave you 8,000 as the maximum. If there is nothing, if there is no other amount here that has the highest figure, like that has a higher figure than 8, or I would say a higher number than 8 among its numbers. All right, so because it's checking this, it sees that 8 is the highest, 3 is the highest, 4 is the highest, 2 is the highest, but here now 9 is the highest, and that makes 94 the maximum, which is a very wrong calculation. Okay, so I had to take my time to explain up to this point. So when you are running your query, you need to be sure of what it does, because you could just run this and see 8,000. When you confirm period table, you realize, yeah, 8,000 is the highest. So your marks on strings worked. But what if another record comes to join this table and maybe you have Wi-Fi of 94? That means this query that you have already configured into your database or whatever means would show wrong results. Okay, so you have to make sure that whatever arithmetical process you are using should act on numeric structure. It should act on numeric data types, either integer, decimal, or numeric. Okay, so now how can we do this without going back to alter the table? Because sometimes you might not have the privilege to alter the table, to change the data type, or maybe drop the table and recreate another table with the proper data type. But there is still a way you can calculate this without going through those process, and that is where we talk about casts. Okay, casting. So what casting does is simple. So casting changes, or I would say converts, a data type from one form to a desired form. Okay, from one type to a desired type. All right, let's use type to a desired type. So what do I mean by this? I could just use cast and change it. So this is how you write cast. So to write cast, to apply cast, I would say cast, and I would say I would call the column I want to cast. Say maybe um yeah, I would just say the column I want to cast, and I would say cast it as, then I would put in the data type, okay, the data type, and that is all. So when I do this, it will recognize it based on this data type, and that would work only for that query. It's not going to change it on the table, it's just for that query. For example, in this case here, let me let me copy this and replace it here. Yes. So in this case, let me remove all this. Okay, let me just leave it. Let me just comment on that line. All right. So in this case, I will just paste this, and okay, let me just do this here. When I run this, it's giving me max 94, right? Now let me paste this and apply my cast. So in order not to confuse us, let me start this all over again. So the first thing is, I know that the column, my price column, is a string column, right? The data type on my price column is string. So I would use cast first, all right? And then what do I want to do? I want to cast my price column, okay, as an integer. All right. I could use numeric, I could use integer, I could use decimal. So in this case, since I don't have decimals, so I could just say as integer. All right. Then I would now put my sum here and here. Okay, that was max. We did max. So I'll just put my max here. And when I run this, I'm getting 8,000 as the maximum value. So despite the 94, because it has realized that yes, this is numbers, all right. So it will convert it to numbers and then check through it and give us the maximum. Recall that we had, I think we did something about the sum. Okay, let's just go and do it again. So let's assume, remember that I said the casting works for only the query. So that you used it here does not mean it has now automatically changed the data type of that column. The data type of that column still remains the same. It just changed in your query, okay, and worked on the table as though it was um a numeric or an integer data type. All right. Now let's still go back to that table and do another query. So let's say I'm doing select and I want to do an aggregation, a sum aggregation of that price column. Okay, remember we have already casted in our previous code block. All right, so from purchase, and let's see what happens. It gives me an error because obviously the cast you did in your previous block did not affect what is happening here. All right, it's just for that particular block. So going forward, for this kind of table, anytime you want to run your operations on the numeric column, you would always want to put your cast. So in this case here, I would just, again, let me just remove this so it won't confuse us, so that I can start from the scratch of the cast. So when I put my cast and I run, what am I casting? I'm casting my price column and I'm casting it as an integer, right? I could, yeah, as an integer, or let me just use another one. Let me use numeric. All right. In numeric I have to indicate. All right. So maybe I want it to be 10 2, right? So more like the decimal stuff. All right, now I would now say sum. I'm summing this and it will give me the value. You can see that it added those decimal points. Okay, so it has summed it. It didn't give me the error. All right, if I remove this numeric and made it integer, it will give me without the decimal because that is the data type I declared. So you can see the effect of cast. So cast comes in handy. All right. So there is another shortcut in Postgres SQL alone. All right. So in case what you're working on will be mostly on Postgres, then you can go ahead. But it is advisable that you try to use the generic ones. Okay. Say I want to use some. I want to do some. So instead of doing this cast, price, and other stuff, I would just do price and I put double colons, all right? And then I'll put the integer. So that alone is saying that you are casting that price column. So when I do purchase, and I run it, it gives me the same result because it has casted it with these um double columns. All right. So when you do double the columns twice, it has given you the cast. Okay, but this works with Postgres. All right. So if you are writing your query for multiple kind of databases, then it's not good to use the kind of shortcuts that sticks to only say Postgres. You try to use something more generic. So, but for cast works for every SQL, okay, whether Postgres, MySQL, or the Microsoft server. All right. So that is all that is necessary for you to understand about cast. Okay, so whenever you find yourself in such situations where the table that comes in for you to operate on has columns that should be numeric in strings, then or other data types, then you know how to cast it. This happens also even in date. If the column was probably a dates column and instead it is string, you can just do price. You could just do the dates column as dates. Okay, so you change the data type to the dates data type. All right, so that is all. Thank you very much and hope this was an interesting session. Bye bye.